Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into a huge topic, thousands of years of human history, all to see if we can spot a powerful, repeating pattern. So, when you think about history, you probably picture a straight line, right? One event happens, then the next, all leading up to, well, us. But what if that's not really how it works? What if history isn't a line at all, but a circle? A great cycle of rise, peak, and fall that civilizations have gone through time and time again. Let's dig into that. So where does a story like this even begin? Well, for civilization as we know it, it all started with a single spark, an invention that changed absolutely everything: agriculture. Okay, let's go way back. We're in Mesopotamia around 4000 BCE. Right there between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, people in places like the city of Uruk figured something incredible out. They learned how to actually grow their own food, grains like wheat and barley. Now, this doesn't just sound like a big deal, it was a total game changer. It basically reinvented what it meant to be human. But here's the crazy part. This new farming life came with a really surprising trade-off. Yeah, it let cities like Uruk boom to over 50,000 people, which is mind-boggling for the time. But our bodies, they actually changed. We went from being these tall, nomadic super athletes to, well, shorter farmers who were stuck in one place. The average guy's height dropped by 6 inches. Think about that. We basically traded our individual physical strength for the power of a massive, organized community. So now you've got these huge cities full of people, and that brings up a brand new problem, right? How do you keep order? How do you control everyone? Well, these early civilizations came up with their own kinds of technology for that, technologies of government. Take Babylon, for example. King Hammurabi created one of the first ever legal codes. And it was famously direct, an eye for an eye. But if you read the fine print, you see something else. His 282 laws made it crystal clear that society was not equal. The punishment you received depended entirely on who you were. A nobleman's bone was worth way, way more than a slave's. And then you've got ancient Egypt, where they basically perfected this idea of social control. They built their entire society into a giant, rigid pyramid, and everyone in it, from the lowest farmer planting crops to the highest priest in the temple, really had one main job: to serve the pharaoh at the very top, who they saw as a god on earth. The whole country was like a machine designed to glorify one person. And, this whole pyramid structure wasn't just a thing on the Nile. If you travel thousands of miles away to Zhou Dynasty China, you see almost the exact same idea pop up. They called it feudalism. Peasants worked the land for lords, and the lords answered to the king. And it wasn't just held together by force. It was baked into their philosophy, with thinkers like Confucius teaching that society only works when everyone knows their place and respects the people above them. Okay, so once you've got these organized, powerful societies, what happens next? Well, they do what powerful groups always do. They get bigger. They expand. And this is where we hit the peak of the cycle, a time of clashing empires, mind-blowing ambition, and some of the greatest cultural achievements in history. Just look at Greece. You had these two rival city-states, Athens and Sparta, and they were like night and day. Athens was trying out this wild new idea called democracy, where they literally picked people for government jobs with a random lottery machine. At the same time, you've got Sparta, a society built for one thing and one thing only: war. They discarded weak babies and trained their boys from childhood to be the ultimate soldiers. Two totally opposite ways of life, just waiting to crash into each other. But before they could really go at it, a much bigger threat showed up on their doorstep: the Persian Empire. King Xerxes rolled in with this absolutely massive army. We're talking over 100,000 soldiers, hell-bent on conquering all of Greece. And this is where we get those legendary battles like Thermopylae. And after the Greeks somehow pulled off a victory against this giant empire, Athens just exploded. It entered its golden age. This is when they built the Parthenon, one of the most beautiful buildings ever made. It's when they basically invented theater as we know it. It's a perfect example of how massive cultural leaps often happen right after a huge military win. But if you want to talk about pure, raw ambition, you have to talk about Alexander the Great. This guy was tutored by Aristotle himself, becomes king at 20, and then in about 10 years, he conquers pretty much the entire known world. He completely smashes the Persian Empire and spreads Greek ideas and culture all the way from Egypt to the borders of India. It only stopped because his own soldiers were too exhausted and just refused to go any further.
But here's the thing about peaks. You can't stay on top forever. No matter how powerful or amazing an empire is, The rise is always, always followed by a fall. The system eventually breaks. And that leads to collapse, but also to rebirth.
And the textbook example of this, of course, is the fall of the Western Roman Empire. It wasn't some big single event. It was more like a slow, painful death by 1,000 cuts. The empire got too big and split in two. Its economy was a mess. It was getting attacked from all sides. It just slowly ground to a halt until in 476 AD, the last emperor was kicked off the throne. Now, sometimes the end doesn't come slowly. Sometimes it's a sudden, massive shock to the system. Think about the bubonic plague in the 14th century, the Black Death. It just ripped across the world, carried by rats on trade ships, and may have killed up to 200 million people. It completely upended society on a scale that's hard to even imagine.
But here's the most important part. Collapse is never really the end. It's more of a transformation. Out of the ashes of the Roman Empire, new kingdoms, like the Franks, rose up. After the Prophet Muhammad, the Islamic caliphates exploded onto the scene, creating new empires and incredible centers of science and art. The cycle just starts all over again.
All right, so we just flew through thousands of years of history. What's the one big thing we should take away from all this? It's seeing that this isn't just a random series of events. It's a pattern, a powerful repeating pattern. You see it over and over, right? First, there's a spark, some new idea or technology, like agriculture, that gets everything going. Then comes the rise, where people build systems of power, laws, and social classes to grow. Then you hit the clash, the peak, where empires fight it out and create amazing art and culture. And finally, the collapse. Whether from growing too big, rotting from the inside, or getting hit by something from the outside, the empire falls, making room for the next one to rise up and start the whole thing over. So this cycle seems to have defined human civilization for as long as it's existed. It's the story of our past, it's the story of our present. And that leaves us with one last, pretty big question to think about. Looking at the world today, where do you think we are in that cycle?